Jehanzeb is the CEO and founder of Mandiexpress. And as I mentioned earlier, this company is trying to solve the problem of making
Assalamu
it
alaikum.
fair for Assalamu alaikum, Jehanzeb. I was just giving you a background that you're doing a great job in connecting the farmers directly to the market, making it fairer for them, giving them better price, giving the consumer better product, and also cutting the middleman out, which in many cases um, take make it very unfair for the farmers. So with that, it's over to you. Would be great if you present, or you have
Yes.
45 minutes, so would love to hear the story of Mandiexpress, and then we can do Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. And hello, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Hope you guys are all keeping well and staying safe. The pandemic, and it's been a very difficult few months now, 9 months now. But yes, my name is Jehanzeb. I run a company by the name of Mandiexpress. Mashallah, we are in our 5th year now. And, recently the prices of vegetables and fruits have all gone up. And generally there is inflation and all of that. But there's a lot more to that. What is predicted is that we're headed towards a food crisis, water crisis as well. And it's very important to understand how our supply chain works, because most of us don't really know where is all of our produce coming from. And for me personally, I was, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I went to university in Chicago, and I just happened to do this little small program called WOF, Worldwide Organization for Organic Farmers. And I was placed on an organic farm in Hawaii where I actually learned to do farming. And that's where I got bitten by the farming bug. And I wanted to come back to Pakistan and change a lot of things. And I was young then. So you realize, kid, it's not as easy as that. But mashallah, we've done a lot. And this is kind of my journey. I started off in my backyard. I recreated what I did in Hawaii in my backyard, added tech to it, and started off a small company, which was a farm to consumer company. And then started Mandiexpress, a B2C company that delivers to people at their homes. And typically anybody you've seen these days, lots of new entrants in the market who are delivering to your house, all kinds of groceries and fresh produce, things like that. Our specialization is particularly into the fresh produce domain. And when they come in, they start with B2C, then they go into the restaurants. But very few make it beyond that. And the reason for that is a very difficult market, high volume market. And most of it is handled by people who are paid very, very little. So it's a high volume game where you have very small margins. But I'm going to be explaining how the supply chain works and the kind of impact that can be done in this space and how we can secure our food essentially. So for us, we have now reached the next stage where we are supplying to the leading B2B platforms in Pakistan, mashallah. And Muslim Daraz, Hey, Fresh, Food Panda, we're aligning with them, Airlift, Kareem now. So they're all starting, they do their own deliveries. But let me explain how the supply chain works. And the supply chain ka jo model hai, wo typically is tarah se hota hai, ki there's a farmer sitting somewhere, in Sindh, and let's say if it's mangoes, and we actually have sourced mangoes directly from the farm and delivered to our customers, but also sold in or at the wholesale market. So the system, how it works is typically a farmer will be in a village and he'll find an agent in a wholesale market. And for the farmer, what he wants is wherever he can get the highest price, that's where they're going to sell their produce. So if you are a connected farmer, then you know what the prices in the mandis are. But if you're not a connected farmer and you've just harvested your produce, you are at your most vulnerable. And it's at that time that you are mostly exploited by the middlemen. So, people say the middlemen, they're the ones making all the money. They're the ones exploiting and ruining the supply chain. Not all of them are bad, and not all of them are exploitative. But this entire market is a very, very capitalistic market. So it goes from farmer through an agent, through a distributor to a wholesale market where it's commissioned or it's auctioned through a commission agent or a RT to wholesalers at the mandi. So a truck aaya, the entire truck has about 750 to 850 patties. They're broken up into lots. The lots are sold to wholesalers. The wholesalers then some of them will grade it, not all of them. and then they sell. One wholesaler typically might have about 20 retail customers or 20 vegetable wallas or fruit wallas, and who then further sell to retailers or to the customers. So that's the typical supply chain. And we come in on almost every single link of the supply chain. That's how it works at the Mandi. Every Aarti, some Aartis are also wholesalers. Some Aartis also have vegetable or fruit shops. That's how it works. So what we're doing, what's interesting is the Karachi Mandi market or the Karachi Mandi supplies all of Karachi, right? This one tiny little, it's literally this size, right? So this is the map of Karachi. There's a little speck over there. This is the wholesale market. This wholesale market has about maybe 300 shops in there. So there's about $3 billion to $8 billion that's traded within that wholesale market right there. And what we're trying to do right now is that we have a wholesale, we have a warehouse in Lahore as well. We're trying to capture Islamabad, Peshawar, Multan, and Quetta. These are all the 5 bases that pull from each of the provinces. That's our goal. And we have estimated that the value of this is approximately 8 billion, that we can kind of capture our potentially the highest amount that one could capture through this would be around about $8 billion if we were to get all of this. But really the point of, or what Mandiexpress is doing is our reputation in the market is to be honest, to be fair in terms of prices. All that matters at the end of the day for a farmer is the price, if they're getting the right price for their produce. And that is what we are delivering, or that's our main value proposition to the farmers that we work with. And then obviously after we have procured that item, then it goes through various checks and systems, and it's QC'd, then it's packed, and then it's shipped or dispatched over to our partners. But knowing the price is a very difficult proposition. And why is it a difficult proposition? So in the supply chain, how it works is, farmer, for him, the biggest problem is buyer, market, price, time, payment, loan, these kind of things. Commission agent, Aarti, same thing. Every day there might be 60 trucks of tomatoes or 40 trucks of tomatoes. The price of tomatoes, how it fluctuates, is all on the basis of supply and demand. So on a daily basis, the prices are fluctuating. Wholesaler, same problems. Retailer, same problems. Everybody in the supply chain, and even on the consumer side, have the same issues. What is the price, and what in terms of the quality? And it is actually, this entire problem is a data problem. It's no more than a data problem. How many trucks are leaving the farmers and entering the various wholesale markets? And I think if we capture these wholesale markets, we'll have a roughly good idea about the total supply leaving each province and entering each city, or each of the major hubs, to be able to estimate what or where the best kind of, where the farmer can get the best price. And now, if there's a farmer sitting in Sindh and he wants to sell to Peshawar, obviously, if you take into account the logistics charges for that as well. So it's, at the end of the day, it becomes a matter about where you can get the best price for the lowest cost of transport for your produce. And by doing so, you're doing 2-3 different things, right? One year, the price of tomato goes up really high. You'll see the next year, there'll be a lot of tomato produced. People will be producing tomatoes, this automatic effect. And all of a sudden, the price will drop, which is a signifier to the farmers, don't grow tomatoes next year, right? See, literally, it works like that. If one can actually know or predict what is going to happen, what is going to fall short in which province, in which city, you can actually better manage and distribute the agri resources of a city, a village, a country. And that's where we're trying to add some value, even if it's a very small percentage of value. That's really what we're trying to do. In that problem, what we've done is essentially build systems when we go into the market and purchase the same problems that other people face: price problems, quality problems. How to differentiate this grade A, grade B, and what should be the right price for it on that given day. Very difficult thing. So that is where we are really what we're very good at, and sourcing quality produce at the right price. And data and tech and automating all of that. And so we've built a lot of tech around all of this, and won various awards. And what we're building now is a platform. Okay, all the data that we have, it's automatic. For us, it's just synergy. It's moving up the supply chain, and all the data that we have, we're going to be publishing it very soon and building essentially a platform where anybody in Pakistan any farmer will be able to sell to us or sell at the wholesale market at a fair price. And I think that should create a lot of impact. A few stats also, by the way. So when it comes to impact, there are about 8.2 million total farms and 3.9 million livestock holders. So 1.2 billion people or families that are involved in agri. 96% of these are less than 25 acres. So a lot of them are small farmers. And only about 30 to 40% use a combination of fertilizers or use fertilizers or use pesticides or use a combination of the two, just 30 to 40%. So well, huge opportunity. There are more stats as well. Okay, like if somebody owns 50 acres, what's being cultivated? Usually there's about 20% ke aaspas that's actually being cultivated. So we are headed towards a food crisis, yet Pakistan's agri landscape is in, I would say, America comparison in the 1930s. And we have all this opportunity to become the suppliers of food to a region. So it's a very good and very interesting time for Pakistan and very interesting time to be involved in agriculture in Pakistan, not just for our own people, but also for the world, really. So yeah, that's the kind of impact that I think we can possibly make. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm going to stop sharing this.
Thank you, Jehanzeb. That was extremely impressive, and you're doing some great work. And I was really impressed how how you have converted this into a data problem, and using tech to solve that. And then because then of course it becomes extremely scalable as well. Can you tell us how has your experience? You mentioned you have been now on it for the last 5 years. How has your experience been in terms of getting reception from the farmers, and also how have the middlemen reacted to your innovation?
Okay, so to be very honest, we have not gone that deep into the farm side yet. And the reason for that is the journey that I told you about. Everybody starts off. When I started off with farm to table, which was I put one farm online. But you realize that it's not a problem. It's not a problem that I was solving at that point, right? It was just I was naive. So you have to go through the entire journey where you have enough customers who want to buy an entire farm's produce, and it's not really viable to do that, at least at the beginning stage. So, but where we have gone deeper, so on the B2B front, on the serving the platforms, on the processes, and even purchasing at the mandi. So where we've spoken and where we have relationships with the vendors at the wholesale markets, the reception has been very good. And I can tell you other things as well. I've seen when I first used to go to the wholesale market, there was not a single person who had a smartphone. Maybe very rarely one person might have a smartphone. Now people have laptops. Now there are some receipts which are digital receipts, right? So there is progress happening at these wholesale markets where people are using technology. There are people using apps which are for their accounting. So as I've discussed this platform model with the guys at the wholesale markets, and I've gotten a good response. But obviously, there's one thing, getting a good response is one thing, actually being able to have them use it. Because to use it means they have to kind of convert all of their khatas, their journal entries into this system. And that's where a localized product that we're trying to create, completely customized for the players at the wholesale market. But I'll tell you another thing. So you said farmers, right? So we have, it's not like we've not reached out to any farmers. We have reached out to farmers. When we've gotten a great response. Every single time, if you put a post up, farmers from all over are always asking about how can we sell. And typically it starts off with what's the price. As I said, for them, the biggest problem is price. There are, and in farmers also, there are multiple types of farmers. So there is the Vadera, the one with the 500 acres and the 1,000 acres. His problem is something else. His problem is he does not want to manage his staff. He does not want to cultivate his land. He wants a Beopari to come buy his land or buy his orchard before the season and take that headache away from him. That's his problem. That's the problem he wants solved. Then there you have the small farmer. The small farmer will do the work himself. His problem is price. So now it really depends, what problem are you trying to solve? Or do you want to make money? So depending on the answer for that, you can go into whatever direction that you want to go into. Yeah.
That's very interesting. And Jehanzeb, this is such a big market. As you mentioned, just the scale in Karachi, that's an $8 billion market. And as you said, that 1.2 billion people, 1.2, what was the number? How many people
1.2 billion people are involved, families are involved in agriculture in Pakistan.
So, these are big scale numbers. So in terms of, what have been your biggest challenges when you manage a business in, this particular area, which is like a blue ocean?
Sorry, I didn't get the last.
What have been your biggest challenges in running your business?
The biggest challenges in running the business, I think it's ethics and HR really. Getting the right resources that will work honestly and with high values and ethics and honestly really to get good quality resources to do work which most people consider to be sabzi, fruit and all of this, but it's not something. It's very difficult to hire good resources, and for us really that's one of the biggest challenge for us is getting those good resources, engaging them and moving them up the rank. So I think that, and second, being related to that is the markets. When you go into this market, the wholesale market, the local saying is ki banda aapko khal utar deta hai. And what they're saying is that there's not a single price board in the entire wholesale market. So if a new guy goes into the wholesale market to do any kind of purchasing, everybody will rip him off. And you open up one peti, and on top of it, you look at the quinoa right now. These days is quinoa citrus. So it looks so good, but then when you topple it, you see what he was hiding. So there's a lot of dishonesty in this market. It pervades from the farm level, goes all the way to the retail level, and to be able to counter that is a very big challenge as well. Everybody in this, everybody's trying to evade, do as little work as possible, make as much money as possible, make their things look as pricey or as valuable as possible. And within that, you have to find your way and find or create value for your customers, essentially. So yeah.
No, that's very interesting. I suppose the more inefficient the market is, the greater your opportunity set becomes, because you can use tech and digital to solve all of these problems. So I suppose that enriches your data set. We are open for questions. So if other people have questions, please write it down on chat and I'll read it to Jehanzeb. I have a question. Jehanzeb, can you tell us a bit more about your company? You've also raised capital. Can you tell about your investors, the capital raise that you did?
Absolutely. So we've been operational for 5 years, and we have about 70 people in Karachi and in Lahore. We have a warehouse in every wholesale market where we operate in Karachi, Lahore, and then we have a head office. And very structured. We're in the middle of, we're like a hybrid structure, not a corporate, not a startup anymore, I think. We're in the middle of that. So taking the innovation, the speed, the quick iterations, the sprints from the startup work. And as you grow and you have a big staff, you have to create those hierarchies and policies. So we've taken that from corporate and tried to cut as much red tape as possible in the middle of that. So we manage things, it's been 5 years. So we try to manage things in a as professional manner as possible. And it's that vision, the values of the company that we consistently try and reiterate to our staff to build that within them, so that we can have this reputation of being players who are clean, reputable, honest. And I think the reputation in Pakistan, it is one of the most important things, to have a clean and good reputation, because at the end of it, that's what that's the brand name that you've created. Honest people. If there's any issue with your order, you always return, refund. That's on the customer side. On the purchasing side, good with our payments, will not cheat. Always there to talk, and none of the exploitative or toxic policies that other people do. So we try to run a good, clean shop.
No, thank you. And can you give us some sense of the scale in terms of your number of users and maybe some GMV or some other metrics which you can share? And also about the investment which you raised. And I know Laxon Venture VC is your shareholder. So would love to know about that experience of that raising capital and who are the other investors which you have?
Okay. So first of all, raising capital is very, very difficult in Pakistan. And those people who have, kudos to you guys. And those people who haven't, you have to decide whether you want to go into it or not. Because with raising investment come expectations of high GMV, of high return on that investment. So, being in the right market is important. And also knowing how much you need to raise to be able to get to those numbers is very important. This business, the business of vegetables and fruits, requires a significant amount of funding. It cannot work on a minimal amount. On a minimal amount, you can open a vegetable shop, but you can't run a proper organization that is dealing with the entire supply chain. That's not possible. So it's a very difficult thing. And experience it is a required skill set to build, is dealing with, directors, your investors, and how to really be a good CEO, how to run a good shop on the one hand, and also be able to hit the targets. So you learn that when you have an investor. And how much we raised from Laxon Jabi recently. And the culmination of it all has been that we signed a deal with D-Fresh, where we're delivering all of the Raz's D-Fresh in Karachi and Lahore is actually sourced and packed by us. We have a deal now with Airlift as well and some other partners as well. So that really got our growth up. We do about 5 tons. We move about 5 tons of produce in Karachi right now, and it's growing. So this year has been double of last year, and we see it growing by an exponent next year, because there are so many more players in the market who want to provide, who want to do online groceries because of the COVID situation. And we've positioned ourselves to be on the back end for that. Okay, you want to buy at a wholesale market, you buy from us. We'll source it. Instead of dealing with the vendors at the mandi, you deal with us, and we will source it for you and provide it to you. So yeah.
Thank you. There's a question from Sana Juan. He's asking that you have dealt with investors. Some are already shareholders. Some you must have met. What are the concerns which they raise when they look at this space of agriculture? What are some of the key issues which they ask you about?
Well, to be very honest, investors typically don't. There are very few investors who actually understand ag tech or agriculture in Pakistan. And what investors are very good at are numbers and top line and bottom line, those kind of things. So the majority of the questions are to do with revenue. What was your revenue last year? What's the revenue this year? What kind of growth you're getting? Majority of the conversations are revolving around that, because these high level numbers they tell you the health of the entire company. So instead of going through all of the details, all of the processes, all the operations, they don't have time for that. For example, Laxon probably has about 10, 15 under the total investors of the directors who are there. My other director is from Tech, Disrupt Ventures. They have about 21 or more companies that they're managing. So they have very little time. And in that very little time, they can't learn everything about your entire business. And therefore, they ask for numbers. They ask for your P&L, positive, negative, cash flow, how it's going, receivables, payables, these kind of things. So you have to learn a lot of finance and make sure your numbers are correct. And then there are KPIs. Next level are KPIs. So if the conversation has gone into that depth that you're talking about department level KPIs, as well as an organization's KPIs, then how are the KPIs doing, monitoring. They want to know about the health of the company. They want to know if the company is growing. Because at the end of the day, for them, what matters is I put in 1,000 rupees. Will it become 10,000 rupees next year, or in 5 years, or in 10 years? Because that's for them. That's the value proposition, right? When they invest in you.
Absolutely, it makes a lot of sense. So, as you said, that anybody who wants to go in this space will also need to become a finance expert to be able to
Yes,
talk that
absolutely.
language.
Yeah, and I
Totally.
think if you are starting a company, being a finance expert is very, very important. You need to know your numbers. You need to know that whether what you're doing is actually going to make you money or not, or whether you're going to go bust in 2 months or 5 months or 6 months or never. So you got to know your numbers.
Do you have competition, and what's your market share? Again, I'm just reading a question which has come.
Yeah.
So, any color on that?
I don't know about market share. I don't know what the percentages would be for that, but competition-wise, yes, we have competition. Nothing direct per se, I would say, because like majority people who are working in this space are not as established in the wholesale market. There is one other player, which is an ag tech player, Recult, but I haven't heard much about them recently. There are some people who are only on the farm side, um, but not many people, or who are doing the farm to table. They're playing that game. We differentiate ourselves from the standpoint that we are working at the wholesale market, and in terms of e-commerce that is at the wholesale market, there are very there's us, there's Sabzi, there's there are sourcing wings for large supermarkets like Imtiaz and these guys, but nobody doing what we're doing specifically. So, but at the same time, when you go into the consumer front and you think about the B2C market, or there is a lot of competition on the B2C front. So it depends how. So we have positioned ourselves in such a way that we're leveraging our 5 years of experience being in the wholesale market, and there are very few people who I don't know of any really major player that's doing that. And market share के numbers जो हैं, I really don't know about that. What kind of market share we have, because a lot of our market share is even indirect market share. If we are supplying to D-Fresh and they're supplying to consumers, we're supplying to Airlift supplying. So I'm not really sure, but I think we have a significant chunk of that. Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And then two last questions from my side. The first is that, as you mentioned, that this business requires a lot of capital to do the kind of, because it's such a big industry. What is that amount of capital which you think is needed to transform this whole industry? And secondly, what are the big next future milestones for you, which you are working and aiming for?
Okay, so I would say the GDP of Pakistan is about 264 to 80 billion, something around there, and agriculture is about 60 to 80 billion, somewhere over there. So now you can just imagine, okay, if you want to transform the entire industry, it has to be some kind of percentage of that 60 to 80 billion dollars that you need if you want to transform an entire industry. And to be very honest, it's not a very difficult proposition to do. And essentially, you need to be able to provide capital to the farmers, capital and information, and inputs. That's one side. You've covered the farmer side. Then you have to provide to them an infrastructure through which they can sell their produce and logistics. So you got to put some money into that. And a lot of these things are interrelated, right? So for example, distribution systems exist. So if you're making a road from DHA phase 8 to DHA city, you are indirectly also creating a link between the superhighway and the farms over there and the city. So a lot of it is indirect as well. So yeah, big chunk of money required. On the one side, inputs for farmers, then marketplaces, distribution, logistics, and capital, provision of capital. Capital and information. If you can link the all the research from agriculture universities, local as well as abroad, and provide some of that information to those in farmers. Once again, maybe about I can't really say what amount, because when you put money into reform in an industry, how much of that money actually goes to reform that industry is also very questionable in Pakistan. So I can't really give you a specific answer for that.
Yes, I meant in terms of your plan. If you had,
our plan.
If you were talking to an investor who say to you that, Jehanzeb, I love your plan and what you're doing, what's the ideal amount of number which you would want to scale up what you're doing?
I would want 2.7 million. I know the number exactly for the first year. I would want 2.7 million for the first year, and I would make it run for about 18 months to 3 years, in which the platform model is something I would be establishing as well as growing into those cities that I showed you. And then the month or the years after, if we were successful with that money, if we actually were able to create some kind of a critical mass and have that momentum going, then it would be a 10x after that. And we'd be asking for maybe about $10 million more in the next round. But our growth would have been about a 10x growth. Because the thing is, these are networks, like the Karachi wholesale market is a network in itself. As you link that network with the Lahore, Peshawar, Quetta, Multan networks, you get the network effect. And that just builds on itself. If you are the first player in the market, you will most likely be the market leaders for a while to come. So yeah, and then there's the exponential effect, right? So you're sitting in Karachi, you have all the Sindh farmers right near you. You're sitting in Peshawar, you have NWFP, some of Balochistan. You're sitting in Quetta, you have all of Balochistan with you. So the exponential effect after that. And the export market. So I started this off telling you about the rising prices. The rising prices are there because the Mandi, there are about, I would say, 8 to 10 times more trucks leaving the Mandi for export, especially onions and potatoes now than 1 year ago. And I've seen this happening, this trend shaping a lot this year. It's going there because the prices over there are higher because of food shortage. Dubai, Abhi, we keep getting demand for onions and potatoes from Dubai, from all over for this. And as we go into the future, this will only increase. Now, as you export and the export prices are higher, the local prices go up. The local demand also, the supply is going abroad, so you have less supply, so the price is going to go. It's going to go up. And also, by the way, when the price goes up, the margins go up as well. So it's not a bad thing completely for the players in the market. Yeah.
So there's a question from Asim Qureshi. He's asking that how exposed are you to the political landscape of Pakistan? For example, like government changes, policies, mafias. I mean, how exposed do you think you are to these?
Very, very little. We try to stay away from any of that. Like, we don't want to get involved in that. Even though like the biggest mango player in the Karachi Mandi is PPP. This number 2 guy is a MQM. These are the biggest players, obviously. They don't only have sugar and all the cash crops, but they also are into this. But only in the big games. They don't go for the small vegetables, fruits type things. They go for the big games. Low exposure, and we want to not be part of any kind of political situation over there. Just, yeah, that's not want to stay away. We just want to work in we want to be the providers of the platform, the ones who are providing the product or the app on the back end. The systems make things more efficient, not necessarily be on the front. That's how we want to operate.
Got it. There's one question he's asking for the investors in the business. What's the security? I don't think that's like a relevant question for any early stage company. So perhaps we can skip that question. And then in any company, there's no security as such. But like, do you have tangible assets? Like, I'm just asking this because
very few. Well, just office equipment for a few vehicles, things like that, but very few tangible assets. Yeah.
Yes, makes sense. And you mentioned you have 60 to 70 employees. How is that distributed between tech versus tech guys versus field guys?
Very, very small percentage in tech. So I have 2 teams of tech that work for Mandiexpress, and maybe about 4 resources that are involved in that. One team right now has about 20 people in that, but like our deal is with the company, and it's not internal. We outsource our tech because tech can be very, very pricey. And the rest of it. So yeah, the large majority of the people that I told you about, they're not part of the tech. Most people are on field. I would say about 60% of our people, or maybe 75% of our people are, packers, riders, drivers, purchasers, contractors, certainly supervisors, that kind of thing. And maybe 10 to 25% are white collar, finance, HR, these kind of things, upper management. Yeah. So we have a lean structure, and that will never scale. We like in terms of our fixed the support functions, we've reached our capacity. We're not going to be scaling that up. Now it's just scaling the packers, scaling the riders, scaling all that.
Got it. And you mentioned, when you mentioned the investors, like when I from outside, when I see I feel as if there are some DFIs which are also active in agriculture. Like their goal is to promote agriculture in Pakistan, such as
Yeah.
the Asian Development Bank. Are those people engaged with you? Do you think that funding from those guys, because some of those guys are giving like a lot of money to Pakistan for agricultural reforms?
Yes.
Do you
I
think
would like to be very honest, I would like to. I have, I've USAID, they're quite active in the region, and I've seen many farms I've been to. They've supported the farmers over there for export of mandarin, citrus, all this thing. I don't know, I've met with these guys, how people are able to win the grants and all of that. I think it's a combination of having the right contacts and I guess filling out all the applications, which to be very honest, I haven't really got into. It is something that I wish that I had time to do, and I should be actually devoting time to that, but I haven't really. So I think this might be my own folly. Yeah.
No, I totally understand what you're saying. There's a question from Richard from Copenhagen. He's asking that, can your platform be added to other markets outside of Pakistan, even
Absolutely.
outside of the region, for example, in Africa, South America? And how do you
Absolutely.
see this platform market for this market in the future? Do you think it will be integrated globally?
In my dreams, yes. Like that's what I mean to say by that is, what I see the vision for it and how I perceive it in the future would be exactly that, right? That you're connected with the wholesale. Well, the biggest wholesale market in Europe is the Barcelona wholesale market, right? Just imagine if the wholesale markets are all connected with each other, and instead of having to decide between should I send my produce to Quetta or Karachi, you're able to decide should I send my produce to Barcelona or US or Australia. That is the future of food. I think that is how it's going to be done in the future. When that future comes, I don't think it's going to be anytime soon, but yes, absolutely.
Why do you think that it won't come anytime soon? What are the barriers?
So I can tell you about the wholesale market in Pakistan and in Karachi. The mindset is in Pakistan is if I'm a farmer, I'm not going to change my ways unless I see my neighboring farmer use a seed which has double the yield. And unless I see it with my eyes, I'm not going to do it. And it's the same thing, getting people to change their mindset. When we start the B2C business where we're delivering at people's houses, the change of mindset, it takes a very long time in a culture like ours. I think in foreign markets it might happen a little bit faster, but I'm surprised that it doesn't exist over there. Like there are wholesale markets which are digitized, but there's nobody who has connected the wholesale markets. That does not exist, and it's very surprising because on the other hand you have e-commerce, you have Alibaba who's taking wholesale of everything outside of agriculture and putting that into shops and creating a marketplace around that, but there is no specific marketplace for this. Challenge is it's produce, so produce has a very short shelf life, and discerning the quality is something that only an expert is able to do. Now, linking that quality with the data metrics of supply and demand, which come through an auction, it requires some kind of a platform or some kind of a system that can do that. And being completely separate from, so if I'm a tomato supplier or a tomato farmer, every day is a different landscape, right? If there are 60 trucks in the mandi or if there are 80 trucks in the mandi, everything changes. So having all this like a dynamic environment around you that's always changing and being able to make correct decisions at the time with that unified data, it's difficult for a person to do it. Only tech can do it, and that's the kind of tech that we're trying to build, and we're hopeful that we will provide it or expand it across the region, inshallah, and then hopefully more, but in the dreams. Let's see.
So there is a follow-up question from Richard, and he's asking that are there solutions similar to what you are building in other markets? And if they are, like, are there any barriers to entry from them in coming into your market?
There are solutions, and I've seen a lot of solutions actually. So there's one in China called Mika. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. This company has been funded $1.3 billion so far, and they do farm to B2B, so farm to restaurants, and they have a huge network of restaurants and then farmers who are supplying. There are very few people who are actually doing. Actually, I haven't found a single one that's doing the wholesale market. Abhi, there's one that just came up, iFarmer, I think it's iFarmer, in Bangladesh, and it's a their vision is also a platform where one can actually see the inventory. But once again, it's not, it does not have the wholesale market. It's just farm to consumer, farm to B2B, not the wholesale market. I think the wholesale market is a very difficult thing to get into. Like when you go to the wholesale market, it runs at night and it's rough. You know, there are trucks coming there. The guys holding big like kattas of like 40 kg sacks. It's a difficult market to get into, and the community in the mandi, it's such that it's just hard for other people to penetrate that. That's why people try and stay out of it as much as possible. So it's difficult, and I think every wholesale market in the world will have those similar constraints. So it's a difficult proposition, but
the localized knowledge. There's another question from Sanahwan. He's asking that he's saying he will love to get your thoughts on Ninja Cart model, which is India's largest B2B fresh produce agri-tech, and do you think it's viable for Pakistan?
So a lot of these, I don't know specifically about Ninja Cart. I followed Big Basket in the beginning, and Big Basket's model was very similar to, like, we were trying to build our model based on the Big Basket model. Then I was following the Red Mart in Singapore. Ninja Cart, I'm assuming, is one of the same B2C plays, and B2C plus B2B plays. And it's just, I think it's possible. It totally depends on your unit economics. Like at the end of the day, are you making money off your min ticket size? If your ticket size is 500 rupees and you make 20% of that, is that covering the cost to deliver that good? And if you're able to have those economies of scale where it is, then yes, which to get there would require lots and lots of funding. We're talking about, like, in one region or one area, one mohalla, you have a vehicle which is carrying more than 20 orders, a Suzuki or something, you would make some money off of it. How much money you would be making off of it, that is questionable. And I think for that reason, I think the B2C play is a difficult play. It's not about actually getting people to buy vegetables and fruits. It's more about getting their data. It's more about using their data for fintech, as actually for digital cash. That's the real play. So all these guys who are going in there are big companies, Food Panda, Draz, who are trying to get these chunks and chunks of customers so that they can sell to them digital products later on. Essentially, that is why they're doing this. So if Ninja Cart's on that same model, I think yes, they would work.
Thank you. And this, I think the last question is from Irfan Sheikh, and he's asking on your financials, that when do you plan to break even under your current scale of operation?
We are making a few changes to the way we operate. So our B2C business, we're limiting it, and actually we're going to be, so because there's COVID and there's uncertainty about funding, we're scaling our B2C. The businesses which don't make that much money, we're scaling them down. And but B2C is one of them. So it makes money in the DHA Clifton area because we have a high density of customers there. So we're going to focus on that, provide better customer service to just that region and scale that. And it'll be cash flow positive next month. So our Mandi business, which supplies to Draz and all of these guys, that's cash flow positive. We make money over there. And then when we do experiments, we lose money. And so these localized businesses are cash flow positive, but then there's the expense of our fixed costs, which are our white collar staff. So we are currently on an overall level, yes, we are negative. We burn money, but I believe that, so we're doing about 350 to 400 orders a day. And when we get about 650 orders a day, which should be in the next 3 months, inshallah, we should be cash flow positive as a company.
Inshallah. There's a follow-up question from him. So we still have 2 minutes, so I can squeeze that in. And he's asking that you mentioned about linking Karachi network with Lahore network, intercity. What about linking Karachi with the rest of Sindh first, which might be a quicker win, given the fact that it's the same geography?
It's a kind of linking Karachi with the rest of Sindh. Karachi is linked with the rest of Sindh. I don't understand what they mean by that in terms of roads. Or anybody in Sindh who's a farmer there, if they want to sell produce, obviously they'll go first to their local mandi. But if they have links in the Karachi mandi, the proximity to Karachi is what gives it access. Proximity and roads. So it is linked.
I think he has explained. He's saying North Sindh, Northern Sindh versus South Sindh. The markets over there together.
Well, it totally depends on costs. It's not about anything other than costs. A cost to send your product from where you are, if it's North Sindh, to the market, and whether the price in that market will be able to pay off that cost of shipping the product there. That's it, the metric over there. And then, of course, contacts and network. Do you have people? So if this person wants to sell in the Karachi mandi, please, you can contact me and I will sell it for you. We can sell as much of produce in the Karachi mandi as anybody gives us. Same, I can move it to Lahore as well and sell it in the Lahore mandi as well. Yeah.
Great. No, thank you. This was an excellent presentation. There is a comment from Richard, and he's saying that he is meeting he met a company in Slovenia or Serbia, which is doing something similar in that local market and has ambitions of expanding. And he's saying that if you want, he can connect you with them.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to. Yes, please do. Thank you.
And he's thanking you for the presentation. So thank you, Jehanzeb. This was extremely interesting. I wish you all the best for the wonderful work which you're doing. And I know people who buy from your platform and they speak extremely highly of it, and they're very happy customers. So, I hope you continue to service well in at least in this neighborhood. So
thank you. And it was a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to speak with you guys and just answer these really awesome questions. And yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.